Right. Good evening to you all. We meet again tonight. I think this session we're going to finish off the last two questions, which is question 3 and question 4. But maybe before I can start, maybe just to confirm if I'm audible, so that I know that you can all hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. Thank you for the confirmation. Okay, fine. Let's go straight into our last two questions. I think tonight it won't take much time because I don't think it's much on this. It's all about understanding the concept and then apply it to the Haval scenario. Right. Question 3, it is saying that Haval can choose to become a house of brands or a branded house. So discuss the two brand architectures and recommend the appropriate structure for Haval, stating the resulting benefits, right? So your discussion should show the essence of correctly naming a brand. So basically what we are doing here, firstly, we just have to discuss what is a house of brand and what is a branded house. And then once we discuss that, and then we recommend the appropriate structure or the appropriate branding architecture for Haval, right? So we must justify why we are saying this is the appropriate brand. That's why we are saying the discussion should show the essence. In other words, it should show the significance or the importance of saying why we are saying this is the correct brand for Haval. So basically, we just have to break down certain concepts so that when we explain as we go along, we know what we are talking about. So we want to maybe define what is brand architecture, right? It is the house of brand and branded house, and the branded house is actually types of the brand architecture. That's why if we know what a brand architecture is, then it will be easy for us to break down the branded house and the house of brands. So basically, a brand architecture, it refers to how a brand appeals to the market and establish the structure of the brand. So it is how a brand appeals to a certain market, right? Or how it establish itself or how it position itself in the minds of customers, right? So it is more like positioning of the brand. So there are two main ways of establishing a brand in the market, which are the branded house and the house of brands, which we want to talk about. So basically, we're going to define what a branded house is, and then maybe discuss it. So a discussion should also involve possibly maybe the advantages and the disadvantages. To a large extent, maybe there's more advantages. To a less extent, maybe there's disadvantages. So basically, that's a discussion. So once we discuss those two concepts, then we can now be able to say which one is appropriate for Haval, right? So when we so let's talk about a branded house, right? Now, if we understand what it is, then you will see that it is very, very simple for us to apply it, right? So a branded house, basically, we are saying that it is a strategy where more than one company, more than one company products are sold under one name, right? Okay. So we are saying that it is a strategy where many company products are sold under one name, right? Let me give you an example of a branded house. Now we are saying that it is many products that are sold under one name or under one brand. An example of a branded house is Apple, right? If you look at Apple, you'd realize that Apple is so many products. They have multiple products, and many of those products are under the name of Apple, right? So that's a branded house, right? So you would realize that Apple, I mean, you can get a watch from Apple. Apple also supplies an iPhone. Apple sells iPad. Apple sells computers. It sells televisions. It sells iPods. You name them. But they are all under one brand, which is Apple. Right. But they're different products. Right. So that's a branded house. It is when a company sell different products but under one brand name. So basically, the name of the company is usually the brand. So it is the primary brand that makes the firm's products recognizable and appealing to consumers. So if you hear of Apple, even if it's a computer, even if it's a watch, it doesn't have any other name other than Apple. So that's a branded house. It is a single brand which is applying to as many products as possible. So maybe explaining that's the definition of branded house in a very simple way, right? So that's a branded house, right? We'll talk about the house of brand, which is the opposite. But then if we can discuss a bit about the branded house, right? So this type of an approach, it actually uses one marketing strategy because you are talking about one brand that is applying to different or multiple products. So it uses one marketing strategy, right? And it covers a company of all the products, which makes it easy to fight competition and to avoid confusion to customers. Because a customer, if he thinks of Apple, it doesn't matter which product it is, right? He can simply go and buy. It doesn't confuse him because he knows it's simply coming from Apple. So they use one marketing strategy for all these products because in the minds of the consumers, they just believe that it is Apple, whether it is a watch, whether it is a phone. They just believe that if it's Apple, and since it's associated with quality, then that's it, regardless of what marketing strategy has been used, because they use a blanket approach in all these different types of products, right? So you'd realize that all marketing communications are targeted to create brand identity. Once you create a brand identity, once customers have become loyal to that brand, it doesn't matter which product it is, customers will only be associated to that particular brand, which is known as brand association, right? So one of the advantages of this approach is that you are so focused, you specialize on a single brand. If it's communication, if it is advertising, you are only focused on that single brand, though it is on different products. So it generates consistency and perfection due to focused effort. It's different when you are focusing on different things. It means you have to split your efforts and resources, which might compromise the quality. So that's an advantage of that branded house. Right. So customers will associate the single brand with the company and can easily distinguish it from other brands or counterfeit products. Right. So a branded house is a single brand that covers multiple products that the company produces. You're using only one brand. The only problem with this brand is that once one product is compromised, for example, if you produce, let's take it in the context of Apple. If you produce substandard computers, right? It can also affect iPhones, which are not of poor quality. Now, because the brand is Apple, the brand for that computer is Apple. That fact, it affects other products that have nothing to do with the substandards of the what? That computer. So that's the problem with this type of an approach. Right? So it will take long now to change the hearts of the customers who would have suffered poor service from, or maybe who had received those substandard computer. They can also desist from buying other products that are under that same brand name. So there's a lot that you can talk about on the branded wares, right? Advantages and disadvantages. It is cost effective as a benefit because promotional costs are only done on a single brand. Like I think I've mentioned that because you are focused. It's called focused marketing. You're focused on a single brand for all these different or multiple products. And a company need to have a tailor-made promotional budget to increase awareness and brand equity for just one main brand. So basically, the name of the company is the brand because it is representing all these multiple products. Right. So in most cases, customers tend to accept products from well-known and established brands. This is because there's less risk in buying cheap quality goods from outstanding and well-known brands. So the fact that Apple is well-known, even if it produces another product that is completely new, because that product, whether it is whatever, even if they want to produce cars, right? Now, because Apple is associated with quality. Now, people, because they know Apple, they are tempted to buy that car because they just believe that Apple is a quality producer. So that's also one of these advantages of using one brand name. So if that one brand name gets to be known or get to have a good reputation, then even the products that you produce, people will easily accept it because of that one brand name that is covering multiple products. Right. So basically, that's the branding house concept. Right. So if you know the concept, just to know the concept of what it is, you will realize that even when we answer the last part, which is saying which structure is appropriate, you are going to see that it will be easy for us to answer that question because we have understood the concept of branded house, right? Okay, this is just a continuation. I think more information is on that simple assignment, but I think that's in simple terms, that is what is known as branded house. Companies with established brands try by all means to preserve their image by producing good performing products that meet customer expectations. Because if they don't do that, if one product, as I've mentioned before, if one product goes wrong, it affects all the other products. That's why you see companies such as Mercedes-Benz, they produce quality products, high-performing products all the time because they know that other brands that they produce or other products that they produce, if they fail, it affects the whole other product lines. Right. So that's a branded house. So you explain what it is, you look at its benefits, you also look at its drawbacks when you're discussing um, um, this concept, right? And then we have what is known as a house of brands. Now, house of brands is the opposite of branded house, right? Now, a branded house, a house of brands, we are saying that you have different products, and each product has got in its own identity, right? Different products, they are not under one brand, but each product is its own brand. I'll give you an example of an organization that is this type of an approach or a model. Now, if you look at Unilever, for example, if you look at Unilever, Unilever is good, many products, right? And those products, they are on their own. Now you look at, there's a soap called Dove. It's a Unilever product, but the brand name is Dove, but it's produced by Unilever, right? You have Lifebuoy, a soap called Lifebuoy. It is a product of Unilever, but it also competes with Dove as a soap. It's on its own identity, right? You have Sunlight, those washing powder and stuff. It's a brand on its own, but yet it comes from Unilever. So, like the name suggests, house of brands, we are talking about multiple products that are standing on their own as brands, right? You can see it is the opposite of branded house. Because branded house, we are saying that multiple products have one brand name, right? But house of brands, because it is a house that is full of brands, we're saying now it is products that have their own identity, but they're coming from the same company. So we are saying that each brand is independent of each other, right? And each brand has got its own set of customers. Each brand or each product has got its own efforts of communication or of marketing, right? So this approach is mainly used by conglomerates or holding companies that have separate strategic business units. I'm not sure if Coca-Cola use house of brands. I'm not sure if there is like competing brands. I'm not sure about that, but Unilever should be a very good example. That is those different brands that comes from yes, that comes from the same company, right? I'm not sure also if Nestle, because Nestle produce mineral water, but uh, but I think the brand is just written Nestle, so it becomes a branded house. So that's where the distinction is: the branded house and the house of brands. The branded house, we are saying that multiple products under one brand. House of brands, like this name suggests, we are saying that you have multiple products, each with its own identity. Right. So each brand does not grow stronger through referencing to other brands, because we cannot say that Dove is doing well, hence Lifebuoy should also do well because of Dove, because they are completely different. Their performance is completely, in fact, they sometimes compete with one another. So, but then one of the drawback of this approach, maybe if we can go a step further, right? Why prefer house of brands, right? Now, the approach accepts that market exists as segments due to different tastes and preferences. And because of the house of brand strategy, it will avoid a one-size-fits-all philosophy. Because what we are saying is that a market is diverse. I cannot have one brand name for all the products, right? Because possibly different markets calls for different strategies, right? The same as, which is contrary to a branded house, whereby we're saying one size fits all. Everything is under one umbrella. We use the same strategy because we are saying it's one brand. Right, so that's house of brands. So the approach allows the company to tailor make strategies. So you craft strategies in accordance to that particular brand as it stands on its own. The marketing strategy of Dove, I'm sure Dove, it actually satisfies a certain market, right? And then Lifebuoy, it also focus on a certain market. So you cannot have the same marketing strategy that Dove use and then use it again with Lifebuoy or use it with Sunlight. So they've got tailor-made strategies for each product. So each product will be linked to a specific brand, which when it fails, if one product fails, if Dove fails, it cannot affect Lifebuoy. If the reputation of the brand of Dove, if it is damaged, it cannot have any effect on the Lifebuoy or the Sunlight. So that's a good advantage of that, right? However, this may confuse consumers of the company's primary identity. Because for me, I didn't know, to be honest, that Lifebuoy is a product of Unilever and Dove is so there's some form of confusion to say who is the main producer of these brands, right? Like what I've said, most consumers want to know the overall owner of a product, which might be, in this case, be hidden in a strategic business, right? An example is Lexus for Toyota. Right. So the house of brands allows for a better, efficient allocation of resources. That's an advantage now to the performance of each brand, because these different brands with their own identity performs differently. So it is easy now to identify which product is performing better, and it will give you an opportunity to best allocate resources, whether to invest more in a certain product or to pull out resources in a certain product because of how it performs. So we are saying that more successful brands, if we are using this approach, will mean that more resources will be channeled towards the production of products with such successful brands. Right. On the dark side of it, it is expensive to maintain a number of brands and service them. It is very expensive because you are using different budgets for each brand, which can consume quite a lot of resources or investment. So we are saying promotional budget has to be made for each brand to increase awareness, identity, and equity. And that requires a lot of effort, resources, commitment, and time. So I'm trying to look at the advantages, and there are so many of them. So in this At this stage, what we are simply doing is simply discussing this concept without talking about Haval, right? Because that's what the question asked. But then we'll come to a point whereby we need to apply, we need to say which one is appropriate for Haval. So that answer of saying which one is appropriate for is informed by then our understanding of these two concepts in terms of their advantages, in terms of their disadvantages, in terms of the stage that Haval is in. Remember, Haval, we say that it wants to penetrate the South African market. So that's the house of Brent. There are so many advantages. I think I've given more information in that document. And even if you go on the internet, you can find a lot of advantages and disadvantages of them. So at this stage, you are required to explain what it is and then discuss what are the advantages, what are the disadvantages of it. So once you do that, and possibly you give examples here and there to show that you understand what it is. So once we have done that now, and then you go to the stage whereby they are saying, now, from these two brand architectures, from the discussion that you've provided above there, what is the appropriate brand architecture for Haval, considering its intention of penetrating or trying to enter the South African market? Now, at this stage, I believe there is no right or wrong answer. What is required here is for you to support your answer, because they have said here, I think if I can go back on the question, I mean, the discussion should show the essence of correctly naming a brand. So we have to show the reason why we are saying that it is this brand architecture that is appropriate for Haval, right? Taking into account them trying to enter into the South African market, right? So from my own opinion, from my own argument, right, I believe that a branded house is appropriate for Haval. Now, according to our discussion, when we are talking about a branded house, we say that we are talking about one brand name for different or for multiple products. For example, the brand name that we'll talk about is Haval. Now, because Haval, we are trying to enter into a South African market and we want to be known as Haval. So, I mean, from my own point of view, it will be pointless when you want to establish yourself in a new market and then you say you have different brand names that is their own identity before you are known in that particular market. So using a house of brand in this scenario, from my own point of view, it can be senseless, because you want to establish yourself in a new market such as South Africa. And the concept of electric cars, it's a new concept, especially in Africa. Now, you'd realize that Haval, where does it come from? It comes from China, right? And then it is under the GWM, right? So GWM is basically the company, the parent company of Haval, right? So basically, it's one of the products of GWM, right? So GWM is familiar to South Africa. because it is here. There are companies there are vehicles that are written GWM. Right. But now you'd realize that Haval, it focuses on electric cars. Right. Is its own brand. Right. Whilst the parent company is known for producing the conventional cars, the cars that we know with petrol and whatever. Right. I'm trying to give a background so that you can understand the point why I'm saying I'm going to choose branded house. Right. So the non-product of the parent company, right, which is those cars, GWM, and that of Haval are different. And even there might be an attempt to be lowered by the existing image of it could be advisable. From my point of view, Haval should use its own brand for its electric cars, because Haval also has got its own brands. There's this brand called Kate and this one called Aura. I think it's if you check your question, there is those kind of brands there. There's the Kate and the Aura. So these are some of the brands that they have. Right. So from my own point of view, these brands should be under one brand, which is Haval. Right? I will justify why I'm saying that. So the better brand architecture for the company to adopt would be a branded house. You can argue maybe and say a house of brand is appropriate based on the information that we've provided of what it is. You can argue and then you can justify. So many people can write different things on this part. Right? I'm sure when you go down or when you are done and then you want to sit and write, you might write something different from what I'm saying, but the most important thing is that you've grasped the concept of what a branded house is and what a house of brand is, and then it will be easy for you to apply. So why this branded house for Haval? Now we are saying this strategy, it will allow Haval to enter South Africa using the established image and success in Australia. If you check, you'd realize that Haval has successfully entered the market of Australia. So they've got an established image or established brand in Australia. So because of that, they can use that success as a means of marketing to the South African market without using any other brand, because they've used the single brand of Haval in Australia. So there's no need even other products that they are going to produce for them to have single identities. I mean, standalone identities, whereby a brand will stand on its own. It will be advisable for them to use one brand name of Haval, because that brand name of Haval has already been established in markets such as Australia. So if you come to South Africa and now you're saying that, okay, fine, Haval is the producer, but there is these products, there's this brand called that one, that brand called that one, that brand called that one. The customers may not easily accept it because they will say, we don't know them. But if you mention Haval, that this is the main brand for these multiple products, people might accept because of the success, or they can check the track record that these people have also been successful in a market such as Australia. So that's why I'm arguing that perhaps a branded house might be appropriate for Haval. Right? So this brand is coming based on the success and reputation of a low price from markets such as China and Australia, right? And a unique brand house will give Aval a better footing. So already Aval is a single brand, is attracted a reputation of providing low price products. So if you employ the house of brands whereby different products would have their own branding, customers may not recognize them because they know the brand of Aval. So just like what an example that we gave to Apple of saying that Apple uses one brand name for all these multiple products, Aval can do the same because Aval now, the brand of Aval is now being associated with a brand that provides low price and good quality. Because there's a statement in one of the questions that say that low price doesn't necessarily mean that a product is of poor quality. High price doesn't necessarily mean that a product is of high quality. So the brand has been well known of low price with good quality. So I would rather use a single brand name for multiple products so that customers can easily recognize the brand. Right. So the low price for the highly capital intensive project would mean little funds to spend on number of brands for its order product range. Right. So because you're using a single brand and you're using a single marketing strategy, the cost of marketing, I think we've mentioned those advantages, the cost of marketing, the promotional costs, and etc., they become low. So once you are able to maintain a low cost, it means even the price that you pass to your customers will also be low. And that will help you to penetrate the South African market. Remember when you spoke yesterday about the socio-economic dynamics, we mentioned about the cost of living that is becoming too high. And we spoke about the middle and the low income people that characterize the market of South Africa. So basically, if you come with a product that is cheap to that kind of market, and they know the brand, that this brand has been successful in Australia and it's coming to South Africa with a lower price, they can easily accept the brand. And you can easily penetrate into the South African market. So a branded house is cheaper to maintain. This kind of approach, it's cheap, right? And this will be the best for Aval. So Aval should be the primary brand. Whatever products that they are going to produce, they all should fall under the name of Aval. They should not be given any other names and then stand alone. Aval should be the primary brand for all its products or its models, right? Just like Apple computer. So that's why I am to choose this brand architecture. That's why I'm saying this brand architecture is actually appropriate for Aval. Now, the other good point is that the company is not yet established in South Africa, right? That it can have each type of electric vehicle running its own brand. So it should get established. So you can't be established in a new market when you have a lot of brands. You confuse people. So it's important that the fact that it is not well established in a South African market, they should use one brand. They should use uniform logo. They should use the same messaging, right? It will make it easy for them. This kind of an approach will make it easy and cheap to manage. while at the same time maintaining a good image. And then you are better positioning the brand. Right. So the branded house will allow future electric modifications to be easy to launch. Because remember, like I said about Apple, even if Apple wants to produce something new, it is easy for people to accept it because already the brand has already been positioned in the minds of customers. So if you want to buy a computer, you can go to Apple, right? If you want to buy a phone, you can go to Apple because Apple is positioned its brand in the positive minds of the customer. So no matter which product they produce, even if it's not gadgets, but because people they associate Apple with high quality, then they'll just go. So that's the same with Aval. Even in future, they want to come up with new products. It will be easy for the people to easily accept them because the brand has already been established in the positive minds of the customers. So that's why a brand in the house is appropriate. Our brand being the primary brand is actually appropriate because it will make it easily acceptable in the South African market. So the Avao electric cars are still having their difference in terms of technological modifications and performance, and as such may not call for each other product to have its own business unit. Only one product line is still what defines Havao business. So we are simply saying all the products that are going to be produced must be under the name of Havao. Right. So that's it's quite a lot of information that I've provided, but I think I've given you the foundation or the footing of how this question needs to be answered. Right. So the factors of choosing this brand, maybe you're talking about the financial strength of the company, right? The primary brand, existing image, the size of the company. So it depends. I believe Aval, because it is a brand that has been successful in the other markets, I think it will be advisable for them to to enter into the South African using that same brand name, which is Aval. So it is cost effective, it is easy to manage, and it makes it easy for customers to accept that particular brand. So basically, that's how it should be answered. You simply justify that, showing the essence of correctly naming the brand. Why am I saying that this is the brand that I want? That's the justification that they actually want in this type of in this type of question. Right. So I don't know if there's anyone with a question before we step into question 4.
Yes, can I ask, would it help to use the sales statistics to demonstrate that these brands already have a footprint in South Africa, and therefore the brand name is important?
Yes, that would be excellent, actually, because you are showing evidence of, or you are backing up your argument. But just make sure you reference those statistics. There are some lecturers who might want to go and check. And so when you provide statistics, especially numbers, make sure that you reference. But that would be excellent. That would be excellent. Research as much as possible. If there's any other information that needs to be added, that you need to back it up, like what you're saying about the statistics, then it will be excellent. It will make the argument more strong.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Right. Question 4. Question 4 is quite an interesting one. I always like something that we always experience, in our day-to-day lives. Now, okay, let me read it. A VAL is an automotive mark owned by Chinese automaker Great Wall Motors. Is it GMW? I don't know what happened. That specialize in crossovers and SUVs. So GMW has successfully sold their products in Australia prior to the launch of VAL in March 2013. Right? They've successfully launched the product in Australia. So with the foregoing statements in mind, assess how the country of origin will influence VAL's new Funky Kids entry into South Africa. Right. So basically, we want to talk about this, what is known as the country of origin. I think it's in the study guide. I should be, if I'm not mistaken, check. If you check, I think on page 296, yeah. If you check on page 296, they speak about the country of origin effect, right? So I just want to, I want us to maybe talk a little bit about country of origin before we try to answer the question, so that when we answer the question, we know exactly what it is, right? So what is a country of origin effect? So basically, we are simply, when we talk about the country of origin, like the name suggests, country of origin, we are simply talking about where the product is coming from, right? Let's take, for example, cars such as Mazda, cars such as Toyota. These cars, they originate from Japan. So that's the country of origin, right? Now, there's a perception that Japan is a country, it produces quality vehicles, right? Toyota is quite a vehicle that many people in South Africa like, right? There's also Germany. Germany is known for producing Mercedes-Benz, BMWs, and etc. Right? So when someone is buying a product, right, he or she checks the country where that product is coming from. That's the country of origin. That's the concept of the country of origin. So by knowing where that product is coming from, it influences the buying decision of a consumer. Right. So it is known as the country of origin effect. If I want to buy, there are certain products that, are produced by South Africa, which are known by the world as one of the best products. So if I want to buy a product and then I check on the package where that product was produced, if it was produced in South Africa, it will influence now my buying decision. If I like South African products, then I'm going to buy. So that is the country of origin effect. We are simply saying that the buying decisions of consumers are influenced by the country in which that product comes from. That's why you say you can see products written proudly South African. There are products that you can see written made in China. So that packaging will influence my buying decision. So it is known as the country of origin effect. So we are saying consumer buying decisions or behaviors in the international market are principally regulated and driven by the rational factors such as experience, stereotyping, myth, hearsay, ethnocentrism, and emotions. Now, these are factors now that emanate from the country of origin effect. But because remember, it is not only about the country of origin, it is also about the individuals that are going to buy that product. So there are certain factors that are involved in country of origin, which then influence the market entry of those specific products. Like in this case, we're talking about South Africa. Right. So let's talk about let's go to the next slide. So we want to see how the country of origin effect influence Aval's entry into South Africa. So basically, we're talking about the perceptions of the customers in South Africa towards the country of origin of that particular product. In this case, we're talking about China. China is the country of origin for Aval. So what is the perception of the South African market towards Chinese products? So that perception now, what it does is that it influences the buying decision of that particular customer. So that influence now has got a bearing on whether that product will be able to enter into that particular market or not. So there's what is known as consumer ethnocentrism. It emanates from customer perception. Now, in simple terms, if I can say it from a layman's language, ethnocentrism is when someone believes that he is superior or is better than the next person. For example, it's just for academic purposes, just an example. A certain tribe would say, we are better than anyone else. And then the other one would say, we are better than... That's ethnocentrism. Right. But then if we are taking it from a customer perspective, let's maybe define it from a consumer perspective. So we are saying consumer ethnocentrism represents a preference for domestic products on the basis of nationalistic feelings. What we are simply saying is that people believe that their own products are the best. We can't buy it anywhere else because it is South Africa that does it best. So that's ethnocentrism. You cannot accept any other product besides the one that you produce locally. So we're saying that ethnocentric consumers are reluctant to buy foreign products because of a sense of loyalty towards their home country. Right? So that influences now how the product can be successful or not. Because once customers are ethnocentric, it will be difficult for the products that are coming from China to be accepted into South Africa. Now, there are many views about Chinese products. If we can be honest, most people view most Chinese products as cheap. Now, China is the country of origin. Remember, we are on our concept of country of origin effect. Now, China is the country of origin. So when a product comes from China, that's where it originated. The perception of many people is that Chinese products are counterfeit products. They are cheap products, not durable products, which they just want to dump in Africa, right? So this implies that this made in China tech and the low price market strategy or market entry strategy that comes with a vow may result in South Africans developing a cold shoulder on the company. Because they are saying that, no, your products, that's their perception. The perception is emanating from the country of origin, because the country of origin is China, and the perception is that Chinese products are cheap and are not durable. So that's the country of origin effect. Right? So South Africans will see their VAL vehicles as cheap quality vehicles, which will not provide the satisfaction the consumers will desire. That's my argument. So the country of origin, you can see, has got an influence on how to enter a certain market, because once people see that this product is originating from this country, they can develop a certain perception whether to accept. That's why I gave an example of this other Germany, and I said Germany is associated with the high quality vehicles. So once it is Germany that is providing, then you can say, we know Germany. There's a perception that even if we think that we can produce better, but there's another country that can produce better than us, then it can override this thing of ethnocentrism. But in the context of our vow, the country of origin is China, and the general perception here in South Africa and other African states is that Chinese, they produce cheap quality products. So it can influence now the entry of this brand called Funky Cat, right? Still on consumer ethnocentrism. Maybe on the flip side of it, right? There is campaigns now by lobby groups for these products that are made locally, the made in South Africa products that they are calling proudly South African. Now, these groups, they are advocating for local content. They're saying, why can't we produce products locally? Because you realize that even in mining, it is the African countries that mines. South Africa is a mining economy. When they mine, they sell their raw minerals to the Chinese. And then the Chinese, they will then produce a finished product, and then they sell it back to South Africa with a higher price. So now there's now people that are saying, no, why can't we produce on our own instead of importing from these countries? So such groups, such advocacy from these groups may have a great or negative impact on the Chinese-made electric vehicle. Because we're saying that, but we can also have the technology to do that. I think South Africa proved it. If you remember in times of, what was that, the COVID-19, when they were looking for vaccines, I think South Africa was one of the countries that was busy also trying to produce its own vaccine. It shows that technologically, as a country, the country is advanced. So why can't it also produce electric cars? So these are some of there are some of these groups that are advocating for people to what they call add value, or they call it beneficiation, whereby you don't just sell raw material, but you at least make a final product. So these kind of campaigns, they've got an impact in terms of the entry of that vow. Because there will be that perception that, no, why can't we do it locally? So locals are increasingly becoming more acquainted to locally produced goods, right? But then when we look at the electric vehicle, I think we haven't, as a country, even reached that stage. So most electric vehicle they are still being imported from abroad because that's where it started. So in such a way, when you're talking in the context, remember I'm discussing, when you're talking it on the context of AVAO, we can say that ethnocentrism might have a little impact because we're saying that locally, we don't have our own electric cars that we produce here and say this is a product of South Africa. So in that sense, ethnocentrism might not work. People might just end up accepting the product. So I'm just looking at both sides. So there's limited choice in the electric vehicle industry. And hence the coming in of the AVAO electric vehicle widen consumer choices, and as such is likely to be quickly adopted by the market. So that's the other side. Ethnocentrism, sometimes it works in other certain products that you know that you produce locally. But when you talk in this case of AVAO, we can argue and say that we don't have our own plant that we are saying that we are producing electric vehicles. Maybe we can come up with a substitute, right? But even the cars that are locally, I can't say produced, but here in South Africa, I think in terms of cars, they assemble the cars. I mean, the parts would have been manufactured somewhere, and then here there's a plant for just assembling. So now, because of that, we cannot say that we are locally producing these cars. So in that way, AVAO might have an advantage, and then they can be able to enter into. So the country of origin, we are simply saying that customers develop a perception because of the reputation of the country or where that product is coming from. So that's how it influenced the end of that product. Another factor that is a bearing on the influence of entering into a market, looking at the country of origin, is a highly developed, is a highly advanced technology. Now, when I look at where the product is coming from, basically, for example, China, we're talking about China. China is one of the countries in the BRICS, just like South Africa. And then China is well known of its sophisticated technology, right? And because of that, we can say that it has a bearing on how people perceive that particular product. Because if a country like China with sophisticated technology, consumers can easily accept electric cars because they believe that a country like China has got sophisticated technology and they can produce highly technical and quality cars. So the consumers' perceptions about the general Chinese products will have a greater impact on the acceptance of this AVAO kit. Of course, the product might be received with mixed reactions from different consumers because of the reputation of the country. But basically, we cannot deny that the country has got sophisticated technology. And for that, we can maybe accept the car into the country, right? And then the other factor is the image of the country, right? It also plays a part, right? In terms of the country of origin. We say that country of origin, that's where the product is coming from. So if the image is not good, then the entry of that product might be a problem, right? You can see the war is it Russia and Ukraine? There are certain products that are being denied. I mean, products from Russia because of the image, right? It's just as an example, because of the image. So someone wants to buy a car, maybe that is manufactured in Russia. I mean, he just want to buy a car. Then he noticed that the origin of this car, the country where the car is coming from is Russia, or the country where the car is coming from is Palestine or Israel or whatever. Then you can say, no, these people are doing this to that, these people are doing that. So that's the country of origin effect. And it influences the extent to which that product will be able to enter into a market. So the image of China, generally, if we look in the South African context, it is not that bad. Because remember, China and South Africa, they've got bilateral whatever agreements and whatever. And you realize that there's big trade volumes between China and South Africa. So the fact that there is big trade volumes between China and South Africa, it means that the image of China is good. So the made in China label will not affect much of the efforts of how to enter into the South African market, because there's already a relationship between the two governments, right? So which means that there is a good image for China. So that would facilitate the entry of Aval into the South African market. Now, the image also sent by the parent company, Great Wall Motors, is positive, because already there are cars already here of Great Wall Motors here in South Africa. Right? So it would then also pave the way for Aval because of that reputation. Right? So that country of origin effect of the image of China being a good image would actually influence, the consumers in South Africa to accept, and therefore their Aval can easily penetrate the South African market. So we are saying it will make it easy for Aval to penetrate the South African market. The good country of origin influence by GWM will increase the relevance of the Aval brand. Right? Sorry about that. There are some messages that are coming through. Okay. And then there's also the issue of stereotypes and certain myths, right? I'll actually explain that. But the stereotypes and the myths, we're saying that they also, I mean, it's all in the mind. It's perceptions. They affect how a product is accepted in a particular market. Right? So stereotypes are characteristics that society instinctively attributes to groups of people to classify them according to age, weight, occupation, skill, whatever. So in this context, there are certain characteristics that we can attribute certain products to China, right? I've mentioned about there are certain characteristics that some of the Chinese products have, especially cheap products, poor quality products. So people would stereotype and say that any product that is of poor quality comes from China. So that's stereotyping. Right? So the stereotype and myth about Chinese products being counterfeit is mainly felt in the fast-moving consumer goods, electronics, and clothing. I think in fast-moving goods, in electronics, I think there's a lot of issues that came out, especially for Chinese. They'll tell you if you buy a shoe that is made by China, it doesn't take 7 days for it to get damaged. But when you talk about the automotive industry, in the context of China, you'd realize that it is a different reputation. China, when it comes to the automotive industry, has been known for producing quality products. So China enjoys a good reputation in South Africa for automotive products through the GWM, that brand. So now, in terms of stereotyping, in the context of the motor vehicle, we can say, we can attribute the products produced by China as good, can stereotype them as good products. So this makes this a vow to have a better acceptance and also experience better positive consumer reactions in purchases. So the Avao electric vehicle is an exception to the condemned Chinese product range, because many products that we know, if you go to shops of Chinese shops, I mean, there's a lot of cheap quality products. But it's different when it comes to the automotive industry. So that gives an edge to Avao to, or it gives them the propensity or the ability to be able to penetrate into the South African market. So that's how the country of origin influenced the market entry into South Africa, right? Maybe just to conclude, maybe give the concluding remarks, right? Because it was a discussion whereby we're looking at what can happen if because of this, because of the reputation of Chinese. We spoke about ethnocentrism. Does it work when it comes to this type of a product, which is an electric, which is a new concept product? So then we can provide a conclusion to say that this Avao brand will not suffer much in terms of the country of origin effects, because the automotive industry has been an exception from negative consumer ethnocentrism. Because consumer ethnocentrism, we say that it works especially in circumstances where you can be able to produce the same type of product locally. So in this case, we don't produce that same product locally. So that won't influence negatively in terms of entering into the South African market. So all other factors being constant, only the low price tag might affect the brand acceptance in the South African market. But on the other hand, you know, if the industry of automotive is known as producing quality products and then they come with cheap prices, then it is also a positive thing to the customers. So Avao should launch its brand with much confidence that it will not underperform due to the country of origin effects influences. So all in all, when going international, companies should not underrate the impact of their country of origin image on their business on the global market. So that's the end of our assignment. So I don't know if there's anyone with a question, but here I think you can add more. I think you have an idea now of what the country of origin is, and it will make it easy for you when you sit down and write on your own. It makes it very, very simple once you understood the concept. So, so that's the end. If there's anyone with a question, so that we call it a night, you can ask.
No questions from me. Thank you so much again for taking the time and your excellent presentation, taking us through this. Much appreciated.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, no, that's fine. If there's no further question, we can call it a night. Thank you so much for the time. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Good night, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye-bye.